I stood outside the small jewelry shop for almost 10 minutes before I finally walked inside. The bright lights reflected off rows of expensive diamond rings, but none of them felt right to me. I wasn't looking for the biggest stone or the highest price tag. I was looking for a ring that carried meaning. The elderly shopkeeper smiled and asked, "Can I help you find something, sir?" I nodded. "Yes, I'm looking for an engagement ring." He opened a tray filled with sparkling diamonds. "This collection is our most popular. Every woman loves these." I looked at the rings, then gently shook my head. "They're beautiful," I said, "but that's not what I'm searching for." He looked surprised. "What kind of ring do you want?" I pointed toward a simple white gold ring resting quietly in the corner of the display. "That one." He blinked. "This one? It's much less expensive." "I know. You could easily choose something more impressive." I smiled softly. "I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm trying to tell someone I want to spend my life with her." The old man studied my face for a moment before carefully placing the ring in my hand. "It may be simple," he said, "but sometimes simple things carry the greatest promises." I looked at the ring resting in my palm. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't flashy, but somehow it felt honest. As I held it, memories filled my mind. I remembered the first cup of coffee Sophia and I shared after work. I remembered walking with her in the rain because neither of us had an umbrella. I remembered laughing over cheap street food while pretending it tasted better than expensive restaurants. Those memories were worth more than any diamond. I whispered to myself, "Love isn't measured by price. It's measured by the promises we keep." The shopkeeper heard me. "I hope she understands that." "So do I," I replied quietly. He carefully placed the ring inside a small velvet bee. I arrived at the same restaurant where Sophia and I had shared our first date. My hands felt steady, but my heart refused to slow down. She smiled as she sat across from me. "You look nervous," she teased. "I am." "Why?" "Because tonight means everything to me." She laughed softly. "You're acting mysterious." The waiter served dinner, but I barely touched my food. Every second felt heavier than the last. Sophia leaned closer. "Come on, Ethan. Tell me what's going on." I took a deep breath and reached into my jacket pocket. My fingers wrapped around the small velvet box. "I've waited a long time for this moment," I said quietly. Her eyes widened with curiosity. "Ethan," I smiled, stood from my chair, and slowly lowered myself onto one knee, ready to ask the question that could change my life forever. Opened the velvet box and held the ring toward her. "Sophia," I said, "I love you with all my heart. Will you marry me?" For one brief second, she looked speechless. Then her eyes dropped to the ring. Her smile disappeared. This is the ring?" she asked. "Yes," I replied softly. She let out a loud laugh that echoed across the restaurant. "You can't be serious." Her friends turned toward us. One of them whispered, "Is that all he could afford?" Another laughed. "I've seen prettier rings in discount stores." Sophia shook her head. "Ethan, do you really expect me to wear something this cheap?" Every word struck my heart, but I stayed silent, holding the ring as laughter spread around me and the room suddenly felt painfully small. I slowly stood and looked into Sophia's eyes. "I chose this ring because I believed our love was worth more than its price," I said quietly. She crossed her arms. "Love doesn't pay bills, Ethan. People will laugh if I wear that." Her friends nodded in agreement. "You deserve someone successful," one of them said. I took a slow breath but refused to argue. Inside my jacket rested a sealed envelope containing the Carter family trust documents. My grandmother had told me, "If she sees your heart before your wealth, she's the right woman." Without saying another word, I slipped the envelope deeper into my pocket. Nobody noticed. Nobody asked. They kept laughing while believing they had won. None of them realized they had just rejected not only me, but the future that could have changed all their lives forever. I closed the ring box and slipped it back into my pocket. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said calmly. Sophia rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Ethan. Come back when you can afford a real ring." I gave her one last look, then turned toward the exit without another word. Behind me, laughter filled the restaurant, but I refused to look back. Outside, the cool night air cleared my mind. My phone vibrated. My grandmother's name appeared on the screen. "Did she pass the test?" she asked. I looked at the ring in my hand before answering. No, she sighed softly. Then bring the Carter family trust documents home. I already did. As I slipped the envelope safely into my coat, I realized Sophia had not rejected a poor man. She had quietly walked away from an entire family legacy. I walked away from the restaurant without looking back. My phone kept vibrating inside my pocket, but I ignored every call. When I reached my grandmother's estate, the front gate opened before I even stopped my car. She was already waiting in the garden. She looked at me and asked, did she choose the ring or the money? I forced a weak smile. She never saw the difference. My grandmother nodded slowly. Then come inside. As we sat across from each other, she poured me a cup of tea. You look heartbroken, she said. I am. Do you regret giving her the test? I shook my head. I regret believing love alone was enough. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. No, Ethan. Tonight you didn't lose your future. I looked into her eyes. Then what did I lose? You only lost an illusion. I lowered my eyes and whispered, how did you already know everything? My grandmother smiled gently. Our private security team watched the entire dinner from a distance. They called me the moment you walked away. I let out a tired sigh. So everyone knows I failed. She shook her head. No, Ethan, you didn't fail. You passed the final lesson of our family. I frowned. What lesson? She looked directly at me. Never trust someone who values money more than loyalty. I stayed silent. She continued. A person who laughs at your heart will never protect your future. Her words settled deep inside me. So this was the last test. Yes. And Sophia? My grandmother closed her teacup slowly. She made her choice before she ever knew who you truly were. For the first time that night, I stopped blaming myself and started accepting the truth. A quiet knock interrupted us. Come in, my grandmother said. Daniel stepped inside and smiled at me. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. So do I replied. He placed a folder on the table. It's time you know everything. I looked at him. I already know enough. He shook his head. No, you only know your pain. Now you need to know your responsibility. He opened the folder and pointed to several documents. You are the sole heir to the Carter family trust. I stared at him. You're serious? He nodded. Every company, every investment, and every property will become yours. I leaned back, speechless. I've been living like an ordinary office worker. That was your grandmother's decision, Daniel said. She wanted someone to love you for your character, not your fortune. I finally understood why the ring had always been a test. My phone suddenly buzzed again. Sophia's name filled the screen. Daniel glanced at it. Aren't you going to answer? I slowly shook my head. Another message appeared. Ethan, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. Don't be so sensitive. Call me. I let out a bitter laugh. She still thinks I'm upset because of a joke. My grandmother looked at the screen and sighed. She believes your pride is wounded. It isn't. No. My trust is. The phone rang again. Then another message arrived. Let's talk tomorrow. I'll forgive your little drama. I locked the screen without replying. I don't think she understands what happened tonight. My grandmother stood and walked toward the window. She doesn't, she said softly. And by the time she learns the truth. She paused before finishing. It will already be far too late. My grandmother picked up her phone and looked at me. Are you certain? She asked. I nodded once. Yes. She made one short call. Cancel every Carter investment plan for Bennett Holdings, she said calmly. Effective immediately. She ended the call and placed the phone on the table. That's it, I asked. That's enough. Daniel closed the folder. Without our support, their company won't survive much longer. I took a deep breath. I never wanted revenge. My grandmother smiled gently. This isn't revenge, Ethan. It's a business decision. I looked at Sophia's unread messages one last time before deleting them. She still believed I was an ordinary employee nursing a bruised ego. She had no idea her family's brightest future had disappeared with one careless laugh. As silence filled the room, I realized some fortunes were lost long before anyone noticed they were gone. 3 days passed without a single reply from me. Sophia stopped calling, but she found another way to send a message. As I scrolled through social media that evening, her newest photo appeared. She stood beside a tall man wearing an expensive suit, smiling beneath the lights of a luxury hotel. My phone rang. It was Olivia. "Have you seen Sophia's post?" she asked. "I have. Are you okay?" "I don't know." She stayed quiet before saying, "Don't let one picture decide your worth. I keep wondering if she already replaced me." Olivia sighed. Maybe she replaced the life she imagined, not the man she loved. I looked at the screen again. The caption read, "A woman deserves the best." I closed the app without replying. For the first time, jealousy and relief fought inside me at exactly the same moment. The next afternoon, Olivia came to my apartment carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You haven't slept, have you?" she asked. "Not much." She handed me a cup and sat beside me. "Tell me what you're feeling." I stared out the window. "I'm jealous." "That's honest. But I'm also relieved." She smiled. "Why?" "Because every new picture proves she wanted a lifestyle, not a partner." Olivia nodded slowly. "Ethan, people can't hide who they are forever. I thought I knew her. You knew the version she wanted you to see." Her words stayed with me. What if she never loved me? Olivia squeezed my shoulder. "Don't waste your life chasing that answer." I looked at my untouched phone. "Then what should I chase?" She smiled warmly. "The future waiting for you." For the first time in days, I believed that future might still belong to me. The following morning, I walked into my office carrying a single envelope. My manager looked up. "Ethan, you're early. I came to give you something." He accepted the envelope and frowned. "Your resignation?" I nodded. "Are you serious?" "Yes. You've worked here for years. Did another company hire you?" I smiled politely. "You could say that." He leaned back. "I wish you had told me sooner." I couldn't. He sighed. "You were one of my most reliable employees. Thank you for believing in me." He stood and offered his hand. "I hope your next chapter is even better." I shook his hand firmly. "So do I." As I walked toward the exit, I didn't feel like I was leaving a job. I felt like I was finally walking toward the life my grandmother had prepared for me since the very beginning. As I stepped outside the office building, my phone buzzed again. Another post from Sophia filled the screen. She smiled beside Mason on a private yacht, wearing a diamond necklace I could never have afforded as an ordinary employee. A new caption appeared. "Life becomes beautiful when you stop settling." I stared at the words for a moment. Then Daniel called. "Where are you?" he asked. "I just resigned." "Good. Your grandmother is waiting." "Is everything ready?" "Almost." I looked at Sophia's picture one last time before locking my phone. "I hope she's happy." Daniel stayed quiet. "You still care about her, don't you?" "I care about the person I thought she was." He answered softly. "Then keep moving forward." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. For the first time, I realized my future was no longer connected to her choices. I arrived at my grandmother's headquarters just before sunset. Daniel opened the conference room door and smiled. "Ready for your real beginning?" he asked. "I think so." My grandmother stood and welcomed me. "Ethan, today you stopped living someone else's expectations. I've been waiting for this moment." She handed me a folder. "Tomorrow, you'll begin preparing to lead our international company." I took a deep breath. "I won't disappoint you." "I know." My phone vibrated one final time. Sophia had posted another smiling picture beside Mason. This time, I didn't open it. Daniel noticed. "You're not curious?" I smiled calmly. "No. My future deserves my attention more than my past." My grandmother nodded proudly. "That's the answer I hoped to hear." As I looked through the office window, I realized I wasn't rebuilding my confidence anymore. I was finally discovering the man I was always meant to become. My grandmother led me into a conference room where a woman was arranging several reports across the table. She looked up, smiled politely, and extended her hand. "Good morning. I'm Victoria Khale." I shook her hand. "I'm Metan. It's nice to meet you." She nodded. "Mrs. Carter told me you'll be helping with several company projects." "I'll do my best." She smiled warmly. "That's all anyone can ask." My grandmother quietly watched our conversation without saying a word. Victoria pointed toward the reports. "I've spent 6 months studying this company's weaknesses." "What did you find?" I asked. "We have great people, but outdated systems." "I agree." She looked surprised. "You've noticed? I've always believed small improvements create lasting results." She smiled again. I like that answer. For the first time in weeks, I met someone who respected my ideas before knowing my family name, and that impressed me more than she realized. After the meeting ended, my grandmother handed me another folder. "Read this carefully," she said. I opened it. "These are reports about Bennett Holdings." I looked at her. "They're losing investors?" She nodded. "Richard Bennett has been visiting bank after bank. Has anyone agreed to help?" "No." "Why?" She answered calmly. "The Carter family quietly withdrew every planned investment. The banks noticed." I stayed silent. "I never wanted to destroy them." "You didn't," she replied. "Their business was already weak. We simply stopped protecting it." I looked down at the reports. "So they're facing the consequences of their own decisions." "Exactly." I closed the folder slowly. "It still feels painful." My grandmother placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Kindness doesn't require sacrificing your family's future." I nodded. For the first time, I understood that protecting my legacy was not cruelty. It was responsibility. Later that afternoon, Daniel walked into my office carrying a tablet. "You should see this," he said. I took it and frowned. Sophia and Mason were arguing outside a luxury restaurant. "What happened?" I asked. Daniel shrugged. "Mason promised another investment. Now he's making excuses." I watched the silent video. Sophia folded her arms. "I thought he had everything," I whispered. Daniel looked at me. "Money can create a perfect picture, but it can't hide the truth forever." He smiled. "You're learning quickly." I handed the tablet back. "I don't feel happy watching this." "You don't have to. I only wanted honesty." Daniel nodded. "Then keep living honestly." I looked through my office window. Karma doesn't arrive with loud speeches. "No," Daniel agreed. "It works quietly." I smiled faintly. One decision at a time. For the first time, I realized justice often moves silently long before anyone notices its footsteps. The meeting ended just before sunset. My grandmother looked at me and smiled. "How do you feel after your first day?" I took a slow breath. "Different." "In what way?" I walked in thinking I had inherited a company. And now, I understand I've inherited responsibility. She nodded proudly. "That's the answer I hoped to hear." Victoria gathered her files and walked toward the door. "It was a pleasure working with you today, Ethan." "The pleasure was mine." "I look forward to tomorrow." "So do I." After she left, Daniel smiled. "She respects you without knowing you're the Carter heir." I noticed. "And how does that make you feel?" "It reminds me that genuine respect is earned, not purchased." My grandmother placed her hand on my shoulder. "Never forget that lesson." I looked across the headquarters one final time. Quietly, without revenge or anger, my new life had already begun. My morning began with Daniel placing a newspaper on my desk. "You should read the headline," he said. I looked down. "Fraud investigation targets Mason Cole's business empire." I frowned. "What happened?" "Marcus Reed has officially opened an investigation." I looked at Daniel. "Is the evidence serious?" He nodded. "Serious enough to make investors nervous." I closed the newspaper. I never wanted his life to fall apart. Daniel folded his arms. "You didn't cause this." "I know. You simply stepped away." I leaned back in my chair. "It's strange how quickly everything changed." He smiled slightly. "The truth always moves slower than lies, but it eventually arrives." I looked through my office window. "So, this is only the beginning?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." For the first time, I realized Mason's perfect image was beginning to crack, and nobody could stop the truth from finding its way into the light. Later that afternoon, I attended a meeting with several senior executives. As I stepped into the lobby, I froze. "Sophia?" She turned and stared at me with wide eyes. "Ethan." I forced a polite smile. "I didn't expect to see you here." She glanced at the executives walking beside me. "They know you. They're business associates." She looked confused. "I thought you still worked at your old office." "I've moved on." One executive approached me. "Good afternoon, Mr. Carter. The board is waiting for you." "I'll be there in a moment." He nodded respectfully before leaving. Sophia looked back at me. "They called you Mr. Carter." "They did." "You must have found an incredible job." I smiled without correcting her. "You could say that." She laughed nervously. "I'm happy for you." I nodded politely. "Thank you." As I walked toward the meeting room, I felt her eyes following me in complete disbelief. When the meeting ended, I stepped into the hallway and heard a familiar voice. "Ethan, wait." I turned around. Sophia hurried toward me with an uneasy smile. "Can we talk for a minute?" "Of course." She looked down before speaking. "I've been thinking about us." I stayed silent. "I know things ended badly." "They did." She forced a small laugh. "I guess we were both emotional." "Were we?" She avoided my eyes. "I never wanted us to become strangers." I nodded politely. "Life changes people." She sighed. "I miss talking to you." Before I could answer, Victoria walked out of the conference room. "Ethan," she said, "the chairman is waiting." "I'll be right there." Victoria smiled at Sophia. "Nice to meet you." "You too," Sophia replied quietly. As Victoria walked ahead, Sophia looked at me again. "I hope we can talk another time." "I'll think about it," I answered before following Victoria down the hallway. Victoria waited until the elevator doors closed before speaking. "Who was she?" I looked at the floor. "Someone I used to love." She nodded gently. "You don't have to answer if it hurts." I took a slow breath. "No, I think it's time." She stayed quiet. "We were engaged," I said. She laughed at my engagement ring because she believed I was poor. Victoria looked at me with surprise. "I'm sorry. I thought she'd chosen me." And instead, she chose the life she imagined. Victoria shook her head. "That says more about her than you." I smiled faintly. "You don't pity me." "No. What do you feel?" "Respect." I looked at her for telling me the truth instead of hiding behind anger. The elevator stopped. As the doors opened, I realized understanding healed wounds far better than sympathy ever could. Daniel rushed into my office holding his phone. "Ethan, it's everywhere." I looked up. "What happened?" "Mason's fraud investigation just became public." He handed me the screen. Every major news channel carried the same headline. I let out a slow breath. "So it's finally over." Daniel shook his head. "No, it's only beginning." I looked at another article. "Richard Bennett's company is already losing suppliers. They're running out of options." I placed the phone on my desk. I never imagined everything would collapse this quickly. Daniel sat across from me. "Lies fall faster than they rise." Before I could answer, Victoria stepped inside. "The International Business Conference starts in 30 minutes. I nodded. "I'll be ready." As I stood, I had no idea that one photograph taken before thousands of business leaders was about to change Sophia's life forever and reopen wounds I thought had finally healed. Stepped onto the conference stage as cameras flashed across the hall. "Victoria Ismail." "Ready." I nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." The host welcomed me. "Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ethan Carter, the next leader of the Carter Group." Applause filled the room. I accepted the microphone. "Thank you. It's an honor to stand before you today." After my speech ended, photographers surrounded me. One picture appeared online within minutes. Across town, Sophia saw it. My phone began vibrating again and again. Daniel glanced at the screen. "She's calling." I looked at the display. "Sophia." Again and again. Daniel frowned. "She knows now." I slowly nodded. She finally discovered who I really am. I remembered the small engagement ring she had laughed at. For the first time, I realized she hadn't rejected my future. She had rejected my character long before she ever knew my family name. My phone refused to stop ringing. I looked at the screen. "Sophia." Again and again. Daniel asked, "Will you answer?" I shook my head. "Not yet." Another message appeared. "Ethan, please." I didn't know. "We need to talk." I closed my eyes for a moment. I waited so long to hear those words. Daniel stayed quiet. "Does it change anything?" he asked. I thought about the restaurant. I remembered her laughter. I remembered every mocking smile. "No." Another message arrived. "I'm begging you. Give me one chance to explain." I placed my phone face down. "My heart remembers the woman I loved. And your mind? It remembers every insult she threw at me." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then don't let guilt rewrite the truth." I took a deep breath. For the first time, I realized my hardest battle was no longer against betrayal. It was against the love I still hadn't completely let go of. Victoria found me standing alone on the balcony after the conference. "May I join you?" she asked. Of course. She stood beside me for a moment before speaking. Your phone has been ringing all afternoon. It has. Is it her? I nodded. She finally knows the truth. Victoria looked at me gently. How do you feel? I stared at the city below. Confused. Because you still love her? I answered honestly. Part of me does. Victoria didn't judge me. She simply said, love doesn't disappear overnight. I smiled sadly. I wish it did. She folded her hands. But respect can disappear in a single moment. Her words brought me back to the restaurant. The laughter. The cheap ring. The broken promise. I closed my eyes. I can forgive the pain. Victoria looked at me quietly. But I don't know if I can ever trust her again. That evening, I sat alone in my office, holding the same small ring I had carried into the restaurant weeks before. Daniel knocked softly. She's downstairs. I looked up. She came here. He nodded. She says she won't leave until you see her. I stared at the ring in my hand. Every memory returned. Her smile. Her laughter. Her rejection. Then I remembered something else. My grandmother's words. Never trust someone who values money more than loyalty. I closed the ring box and slipped it into my pocket. What should I tell her? Daniel asked. I stood and walked toward the door. Tell her I'll give her one meeting. He looked surprised. Are you sure? I took a slow breath. I need answers. As we walked toward the elevator, I knew tomorrow would decide whether my heart could finally let go of the past or become trapped there forever. Daniel opened my office door and looked at me. She's waiting. I nodded slowly. Sent her in. A few seconds later, Sophia stepped inside. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had laughed at me in the restaurant. Her eyes were red, and her hands trembled. Thank you for seeing me, she whispered. I pointed toward the chair across from me. Please sit. She remained standing. I don't deserve your kindness. I looked at her quietly. What did you want to say? She lowered her head. I'm sorry. The room fell silent. She spoke again. I'm sorry for laughing at you. I'm sorry for judging you. I'm sorry for believing money mattered more than your heart. I took a slow breath. Why now? Tears filled her eyes. Because I finally understand what I threw away. I remained silent. She wiped her face. I wasn't just rejecting a ring. Her voice broke. I was rejecting the best man I ever knew. I looked at her without speaking. She reached in her handbag and placed a small velvet box on my desk. I've carried this every day, she whispered. I stared at it. The ring. She nodded. I couldn't throw it away. My hands trembled as I opened the box. The same simple white gold ring rested inside. Every memory came rushing back. The jewelry shop, my grandmother's advice, the restaurant, the laughter. Sophia lowered her eyes. I used to think it was cheap. I closed the box gently. And now I know it was priceless. I looked at her quietly. The ring never changed. No, you did. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I know. She took a shaky breath. If I could go back, I'd say yes before I even looked inside that box. I held the ring tightly. Part of me remembered the future I had dreamed about. Another part remembered the pain that destroyed it forever. Sophia lowered her head and quietly wiped away another tear. I understand, she whispered. Before I could answer, someone knocked gently on the open office door. Victoria stepped inside, carrying several reports. Oh, I'm sorry, she said. I didn't realize you were in a meeting. It's all right, I replied. She looked at Sophia, then back at me. I can come back later. Thank you. Victoria smiled politely. Take your time. She quietly left without asking a single question. Sophia watched the door close. She seems kind. She is. And she knows about us. I told her the truth. Sophia nodded slowly. She didn't judge me. No. She closed her eyes. I wish I had shown you that same kindness. I looked at her sadly. We all live with our choices. She took one final breath. I never wanted to become your biggest regret. I answered honestly. You are my regret. She looked up. My greatest regret was believing you would choose love over appearances. Sophia stood slowly and picked up her bag. I guess this is goodbye, she said quietly. I nodded. I think it is. She looked at me one last time. I truly loved you, Ethan. I know. I was simply too blind to recognize what really mattered. I held the small ring in my hand. I hope one day you find peace. She smiled through her tears. I hope you do too. She turned toward the door, then stopped. Thank you for meeting me. Take care of yourself, Sophia. Without another word, she walked away. The door closed softly behind her. I stood alone, staring at the ring that had once carried all my dreams. It no longer represented the future I had imagined. Instead, it reminded me of the man I had become. I placed it inside my desk drawer and closed it gently. Some doors never reopen. Some goodbyes never need another conversation. This time, I finally found the strength to let her go forever. Daniel entered my office carrying another file. It's official, he said. I looked up. What happened? Marcus Reed submitted the final investigation. I accepted the folder and opened it slowly. So the evidence is complete? Daniel nodded. Every transaction, every hidden account, every false report. I closed the file. Mason really did all of it. He did. I leaned back quietly. I kept hoping there would be another explanation. There wasn't. A few moments later, my grandmother entered. The court begins tomorrow, she said. I nodded. I'll attend. She looked at me carefully. Not because you want revenge. No. Then why? I answered honestly. Because I want the truth to be seen. She smiled proudly. The truth doesn't need anger to win. I stood beside the window. For the first time, justice felt calm instead of satisfying. I entered the courtroom quietly and sat beside Daniel. He leaned toward me. Judge Harold Simmons is about to begin. I nodded. Marcus Reed walked to the witness stand carrying several thick folders. Judge Simmons looked across the room. Mr. Reed, you may proceed. Marcus opened the first file. We uncovered years of fraudulent transactions, hidden debts, and falsified financial records. The courtroom became silent. Daniel whispered, "This is everything." I watched Mason lower his head. Marcus continued. Multiple warnings were ignored despite clear evidence. I looked toward Richard Bennett. He avoided everyone's eyes. Judge Simmons asked, "Did the company receive these warnings?" Marcus answered firmly, "Yes, Your Honor." The judge nodded slowly. Then the record will reflect that management knowingly ignored repeated signs of fraud. I lowered my eyes. The truth had finally reached the place where no lie could escape it. After the hearing ended, I stepped outside with Daniel. He looked at me. "How are you feeling?" I took a slow breath. Surprisingly quiet. He frowned. I expected relief. I thought I would feel that too. My phone vibrated. Sophia had sent one final message. "Everything is gone. I finally understand." "I'm sorry." I stared at the words for a moment. Daniel asked, "Will you reply?" I locked my phone. "No." "Do you still hate her?" I shook my head. "I don't." "Then what do you feel?" I looked toward the courthouse. Sadness. For her. For everyone. Daniel stayed silent. They chased a life built on appearances. And lost the life they already had. I nodded slowly. No victory could erase the pain created by years of selfish choices. Some lessons arrived only after everything else had disappeared. That evening, I visited my grandmother at her estate. She smiled as I walked inside. "How did the hearing go?" I sat across from her. The truth finally came out. She poured us both tea. "And how do you feel?" I thought for a moment. I expected satisfaction. "And I only feel peace." She smiled warmly. "That's the difference between justice and revenge." I nodded. "I never had to destroy anyone." "No," she replied. "They destroyed themselves." I looked down at my cup. Their own choices led them here. She reached across the table. "Never forget that." "I won't." She squeezed my hand gently. "Real wealth isn't measured by money." "What is it measured by?" She smiled. "Peace." I looked out the window as the sun disappeared beyond the trees. For the first time, I understood that winning meant protecting my heart instead of proving someone else wrong. I sat in the garden with my grandmother the next morning. She asked, "Are you ready to move forward?" "Yes," I answered. "I think I am." She smiled. "Then remember what you learned." I looked at her. "That money doesn't define people?" "Exactly," she said. "And neither does victory." I looked toward the city beyond the trees. I thought revenge would make me happy. "And now?" she asked. "Now I know peace is better." She nodded proudly. "You finally understand the Carter legacy." I smiled softly. "The greatest fortune I have is knowing who I am." She placed her hand on my shoulder. "Never lose that." I looked at the quiet garden and felt grateful. The past had hurt me, but it had also changed me. I was no longer searching for approval from anyone. I had found my own strength. And finally, I understood true wealth was inner peace forever. Several months passed before our company celebrated its greatest expansion in decades. I stood beside Victoria as applause filled the ballroom. She smiled at me. "You did it." I laughed softly. "We did it." She shook her head. "You give everyone else credit. Because I never reached this place alone." She looked around the room. "Your grandmother must be proud." "I hope so." Just then, my grandmother joined us. "I am proud," she said with a warm smile. I laughed. "I should have known you were listening." "I always am." Victoria smiled. "He's still humble." My grandmother nodded. "That's why he'll protect this family." I looked at Victoria. "You've been beside me through every difficult step." She smiled gently. I never planned to leave. As the celebration continued around us, I realized success felt meaningful only because I finally had people beside me who valued my character before my name or fortune. A week after the celebration, I called Victoria. "Are you free tonight?" I asked. She laughed softly. "I was hoping you'd ask. I want to show you somewhere." "Should I be nervous?" "Only a little." That evening, I drove us to the same restaurant where my life had once fallen apart. She looked around the dining room. "This place seems important." "It is." We sat quietly for a few moments. She noticed my expression. "What are you thinking?" "I came here once believing love alone would be enough. And now I know love also needs trust." She reached across the table and gently held my hand. "You've never had to earn my trust, Ethan." Her words warmed my heart. For the first time, I returned to this restaurant without pain. Instead, I felt hope quietly replacing every memory that had once broken me from within completely forever. Writing. I reached into my jacket pocket and removed the same small velvet box. Victoria looked at it, then back at me. "Is that what I think it is?" I smiled. "It is." I slowly opened the box. The simple white gold ring rested inside, exactly as I remembered. "I bought this ring a long time ago," I said. She listened quietly. "It once carried a dream that never came true." I took a deep breath. "Today, it carries a new beginning." Before I could kneel, Victoria smiled through happy tears. "You don't have to finish asking." I laughed softly. "I still want to." I lowered myself onto one knee. "Victoria, will you marry me?" She nodded immediately. "Yes." "No questions." She shook her head. "I already know the man holding the ring." Her answer filled my heart with peace greater than any fortune I could ever inherit or possess. I slipped the ring onto Victoria's finger. She looked at it and smiled. "It's beautiful." I laughed softly. "It's the simplest ring in the room." She shook her head. "No." I looked at her. "It carries your heart." I felt my eyes grow warm. "You never asked how much it cost." "I never needed to." "Why?" She smiled gently. "Because I fell in love with the man, not the price." I squeezed her hand. "You have no idea what those words mean to me." "I think I do." She looked in my eyes. "You spent so much time wondering whether someone could love you without your fortune." "I did." "You don't have to wonder anymore." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't painful. It was peaceful. For the first time, the same restaurant no longer reminded me of heartbreak. It reminded me that genuine love always chooses character before wealth. As we walked out of the restaurant together, I looked back one last time. "Victoria noticed." "What are you thinking?" I smiled. "I'm saying goodbye." "To what?" "To the man who believed losing one person meant losing his future." She squeezed my hand. "You found something better." "I found myself." We walked toward the waiting car beneath the quiet evening sky. I thought about Sophia for a brief moment. Without her painful choice, I might never have discovered my true worth. Victoria looked at me. "You seem peaceful." "I finally am." She smiled. "Then let's keep walking." "I'd like that." I took one final look at the city before turning forward. My heart no longer carried regret. It carried gratitude, hope, and quiet confidence. As our new journey began, I silently thanked the past for teaching me that true love is built on trust, never wealth. I stood quietly beside Victoria as the morning sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Carter Group headquarters. Months had passed since our engagement, yet every morning I still found myself smiling when I remembered the simple ring resting on her finger. Victoria looked up from her tablet and smiled. "You're staring again." I laughed. "Can you blame me?" She raised an eyebrow. "What did I do this time?" "You reminded me that life can surprise us." She walked closer. "I hope that's a good thing." "It is." She gently squeezed my hand. "Good, because we have a very busy day." I looked at the large schedule displayed on the conference screen. 3 board meetings, 2 international video conferences, and 1 charity dinner. She smiled. "You forgot one." I frowned. "What?" "Lunch." I laughed. "I always forget lunch." "I know. That's why you remind me." She folded her arms. "And I'll keep reminding you." Before I could answer, Daniel entered the room carrying several files. "Good morning." "Morning," I replied. "Victoria Smail Pelaitli." "Good morning, Daniel." He placed the folders on the table. "The European expansion has officially been approved." I looked at him. "Already?" He nodded. "Our partner signed everything this morning." Victoria Smail proudly. "Congratulations." I shook my head. "This belongs to everyone." Daniel laughed. "You still refuse to take credit." I learned a long time ago that no company succeeds because of one person. Victoria looked at me. "And that's exactly why people trust you." A few minutes later, my grandmother entered the conference room. Everyone stood. She smiled warmly. "Sit down." I pulled out a chair for her. "How are you feeling today, Grandma?" She smiled. "I feel much better now that I see all of you working together." Daniel nodded. "We're making good progress." She looked at me. "And how are you?" I thought for a moment. "Peaceful." She smiled. I watched Sophia quietly leave the reception lounge. She stopped at the doorway and turned back one last time. "Ethan." "Yes." "I truly hope you stay happy." I smiled gently. "I hope you find peace too." She nodded. "I'll try." Without another word, she walked away. I stood there for several moments, watching the elevator doors close behind her. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel regret either. I simply felt calm. A familiar voice spoke behind me. "Did your heart survive?" I turned around and smiled. Victoria stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. "I think it finally did." She handed 1 cup to me. "I wasn't worried about your decision." "You weren't." She shook her head. "I trust the man I love." Her words made me smile. I'll never get tired of hearing that. "I know." We walked toward the executive balcony overlooking the city. The evening sun painted the buildings with soft golden light. Victoria leaned against the railing. So, is that chapter finally over?" I looked at the horizon. "Yes. No more looking back." I took a deep breath. "No more." She smiled. "Good." My phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. I answered immediately. "Hey, Ethan, where are you?" "With Victoria." "Good. Why?" "Grandmother wants everyone home tonight." "Is everything okay?" Daniel laughed. "Relax. It's good news." "What kind of good news?" "You'll see." An hour later, Victoria and I arrived at the Carter family estate. The mansion looked brighter than usual. The gardens were filled with lights. Soft music floated through the evening air. Victoria looked around. "This doesn't look like an ordinary family dinner." I smiled. I was thinking the same thing. As soon as we entered, Olivia ran toward us with a huge smile. "There you are." "What happened?" She laughed. "Grandmother has been waiting." Victoria Guisperth. "I think we're late." Olivia grinned. "Very ill." The applause slowly faded, but I still couldn't find the right words. I looked at my grandmother. "I don't know what to say." She smiled warmly. "You don't have to say anything. I haven't done enough to deserve this." Daniel laughed. "There you go again." "What?" "Always giving everyone else the credit." Olivia nodded. "He's right." Grandmother folded her hands. "Ethan, do you remember the first lesson I ever taught you?" I smiled faintly. "You told me that leadership is service." "And have you forgotten it?" "Never." She looked around the table. "That's exactly why you're ready." I lowered my eyes. "I've made mistakes. So has every leader. I've doubted myself. So has every leader. I've been afraid." She nodded. "The difference is that you never allowed fear to decide your character." Her words stayed with me. Victoria gently squeezed my hand. I've watched you make difficult decisions. I looked at her. You've also watched me make mistakes. She smiled. And every mistake made you kinder. I laughed softly. I don't know about that. Edo. Daniel raised his glass. To Ethan. Everyone lifted their glasses. To Ethan. The dinner continued with laughter, stories, and memories I hadn't heard in years. For the first time, work wasn't the center of our conversation. We talked about family, about childhood, about my grandfather. Grandmother smiled as she remembered him. He always believed our greatest investment wasn't money. I finished her sentence. It was people. She pointed at me. Exactly. Later that evening, Victoria and I stepped into the garden. Thousands of tiny lights decorated the trees. The cool evening breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers. Victoria looked up at the stars. It's beautiful. It is. She smiled. Do you know what I admire most about you? I laughed. Tell me. You could have become proud. I almost did, but you didn't. I looked at the quiet fountain. The Carter Group headquarters was filled with excitement as employees gathered for my official chairman appointment ceremony. Standing backstage, I adjusted my tie and took a deep breath. Victoria walked over with a gentle smile. Nervous? A little. She straightened my tie. Good. I looked at her and laughed. Good. She nodded. It means you still understand how important this responsibility is. I smiled. I don't ever want to lose that feeling. You won't. Daniel stepped backstage. They're ready for you. I nodded. Let's do this. As I walked onto the stage, hundreds of employees stood and applauded. Looking across the room, I didn't see investors. I didn't see executives. I saw thousands of dreams that depended on our decisions. I stepped to the microphone. When I first entered this company, almost no one knew my name. The room became silent. I wasn't looking for recognition. I was looking for purpose. I smiled. Today, standing before you as chairman isn't the greatest achievement of my life. People listen carefully. My greatest achievement is knowing that I never had to become someone else to earn your respect. The applause echoed through the hall. I continued. Years ago, I believed success meant proving people wrong. I paused. I was wrong. Success means becoming someone your younger self would admire. The audience rose to their feet once again. After the ceremony ended, employees came forward one by one. Some wanted photographs. Some simply wanted to shake my hand. An elderly employee stopped in front of me. I worked with your grandfather for 35 years. I smiled respectfully. It is an honor to meet you. He held my hand firmly. He will be proud of the man you've become. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Thank you. Those two words carried more meaning than any business award I had ever received. That